You know that feeling when you check your bank account and instead of immediately closing the app in horror, you actually smile? Most financial gurus will tell you that you need $1 million to feel secure or that 6 figures is the magic number. But they are missing something crucial. There is a much smaller milestone that completely transforms your relationship with money, and once you hit it, your brain literally changes how it processes every decision you make. When you think about building wealth, what comes to mind? Maybe you picture someone who never has to think about price tags, or perhaps someone grinding away for decades, accumulating wealth $1 at a time. The truth is, wealth building doesn't work the way most people assume. Certain financial thresholds act like invisible barriers. Before you cross them, every step feels like an uphill battle against gravity. But once you cross them, the fundamental rules of your daily life completely shift. Think of it like trying to push a massive stone boulder up a steep hill. At the start, you are straining, sweating, and making virtually no visible progress. You constantly question whether your effort is even doing anything. But once you build enough momentum and reach the crest, something changes. The boulder starts moving under its own momentum, rolling down the other side almost effortlessly. A foundational savings buffer is that precise turning point where your financial boulder finally reaches the top of the hill. The real difference at this milestone isn't just mathematical. It is not simply that you have more capital to invest or that your percentage returns represent larger dollar amounts. The real transformation happens inside your brain. When you have no financial reserve, your mind operates in a continuous state of survival mode. Every decision, no matter how small, gets filtered through fear and scarcity. In survival mode, you take the first job offer that comes along, even if the environment is toxic, because you literally cannot afford to be patient. You stay in situations you dislike because leaving feels like an existential risk. You say yes to demands you would otherwise decline because immediate survival dictates your choices. When your mental bandwidth is entirely consumed by short-term threats, your brain physically lacks the space to plan for long-term growth. It is like trying to plan a long-term vacation while the room around you is actively on fire. Your entire focus is locked onto the immediate threat. But something remarkable happens when you cross that initial threshold of true financial security. Suddenly, your brain gains the cognitive room to operate differently. Instead of asking how to survive until next week, you begin asking how to build for next year. Research into financial well-being shows that even a small emergency reserve creates a massive reduction in psychological strain. A buffer of just a few $1,000s moves a person out of acute panic. But when that reserve expands to cover several months of essential living expenses, your entire cognitive operating system upgrades. You move from defensive preservation to offensive strategy. This is where the mathematical acceleration begins to align with your psychological shift. Imagine you are consistently setting aside money every single month. Accumulating your first major buffer takes a long time. It demands months of discipline, quiet sacrifices, and delayed gratification. It feels slow, and frankly, most people abandon the process halfway through because the feedback feels invisible. However, building your second equivalent buffer takes noticeably less time. Why? Because now your original money is working alongside your ongoing effort, generating its own quiet returns. You are putting in the exact same amount of work, but your timeline shrinks because your capital is sharing the heavy lifting. By the time you reach larger portfolio milestones, the compounding effect creates progress that happens almost automatically. Up until that first major threshold, returns feel insignificant because you are working with smaller numbers. A percentage gain on a tiny sum is nice, but it doesn't shift your daily reality. But that exact same percentage gain on a fully established foundation yields a result that actually changes your options. The underlying investment strategy isn't any more complex than what anyone else uses, it is simply a matter of scale, transforming small visual percentages into meaningful real-world progress. Yet the most important aspect of reaching this stage is not just the balance listed on a screen. It is the fact that you have fundamentally rewired your own internal identity. Reaching a real financial milestone from scratch requires you to track your trajectory, decline short-term impulses, and resist blowing your progress on immediate novelties. You prove to yourself that you are in control of your resources rather than letting your immediate desires dictate your future. That identity shift alters every choice you make going forward. Before reaching this stability, every small expense creates a micro-conflict in your head. Afterward, you stop exhausting your mental energy on trivial micro-decisions because you know your broader direction is secure. You save your cognitive energy for macro decisions, optimizing your housing structure, advancing your career leverage, and ensuring your foundational strategy remains solid. You also begin seeing the world through the lens of opportunity rather than threat. When living paycheck to paycheck, an unexpected breakdown or sudden repair feels like a catastrophe that derails your month. But with a solid buffer, those same events are reduced to minor inconveniences. You pay for the resolution, move on, and keep your focus intact. More importantly, you begin noticing positive opportunities that were previously invisible to you. A promising career move that requires temporary adjustment, an educational certification that boosts long-term income, or a high-potential project that demands upfront effort, these become viable options rather than unrealistic risks. Having money available creates options, and having options is the primary mechanism through which more wealth is generated. This stability fundamentally alters your relationship with work. Without a buffer, you are locked into your immediate employment position regardless of how unreasonable or exhausting it becomes. That reality leaves you in a weak negotiating stance. You hesitate to request fair compensation or push back on poor treatment because the risk of losing immediate cash flow feels too high. Having dedicated reserve capital changes the dynamic completely. It gives you what can best be described as walking away power. It means you negotiate from a position of quiet strength rather than quiet desperation. Interestingly, you rarely ever need to use that reserve. Simply knowing it exists changes your posture, your confidence, and how you carry yourself in high-stakes environments. Where many people stumble is what happens immediately after hitting their first real milestone. They feel the psychological relief, mistake that relief for permanent success, and promptly drain their foundation on a shiny luxury item or an expensive consumption trap. They treat their foundation as a reward for good behavior rather than the essential soil required for long-term freedom. True financial stability isn't about looking wealthy to people you don't know. It is about quietly buying back control over your time, your focus, and your daily decisions. Reaching your first true financial threshold won't turn you into an overnight millionaire, but it will forever change how you think about risk, work, and opportunity. Build that foundation quietly, protect it fiercely, and let the compound effect do the rest.